I want to go through a lot of things today. I always love to start with how you started with this and you go all the way back. Like, when was the first time you were kind of like aware of theater and said, oh, this is for me?
Well, I suppose it was pretty late in relative terms. I think about, our poor children who are now in their mid-20s who were raised by two playwrights. The theater was around them all the time, but I didn't see a play till I was, I'm sure, 16. My
Oh,
dad didn't see a play till I wrote a play in my 20s. So it just wasn't, I had a very wonderful childhood in Denver, Colorado, played a lot of baseball, horsed around, but it wasn't in my purview at all. However, I had a good high school friend whose mom ran the music theater program at Loretta Heights College in Denver. And we went to a musical review at that theater. I may have been to a little play or something. I possibly was in a high school play before I'd ever seen a play. And you really are, I'm saving you from having watched me act. But this is what I remember, whether this was the first thing I ever saw or not. I'm probably 17, and they're doing a musical review of the popular shows at the time. What would that have been? Like Pippin and Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell and things like that. I don't really know what I'm in for. I'm sitting there in my seat, no experience in the theater at all. A light comes up, a tight spot of light comes up in what I now know to be the upright corner of the stage. And there's a woman in a long hair in a simple like muslin dress, very mid 70s, and their long brownish reddish hair. And she proceeds to sing a cappella Neil Young's After the Gold Rush. And a shaft of light comes up from all the way upright to what I now know to be all the way down left. And that young woman sang that incomparable song as she walked slowly down that shaft of light. And then she got to the down left corner, the song completed, all a cappella. Man, I didn't know what that was, Rodney, but I wanted some. I wanted some. I didn't know there were playwrights. I'm
right.
not even kidding. I went to 4 years of 3.5 years of college. I got a general theater degree up in Greeley, Colorado. I had wonderful instructors, etc. I really didn't know there were playwrights that walked the earth. My naivete was momentous, but I saw that image and it was proximate and it was visceral and it had spectacle and it had intimacy. And so here you and I sit these years later and we're fortunate enough to get to make theater. But aren't those the things we're always trying to get?
Oh, yeah. It's like you find your way back.
Yeah.
What's amazing to me is how visual it was for you. Like, it's
Oh,
like it's like you describe it. I mean, what a great description through words.
yeah. And nobody overthought it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
lesson to you and I as directors, right? Like you could you could busy that up. But you had a song, the equivalent now to me is we have a story. If you have a story, there's a lot. It's hard to write a play. It's hard to direct a play. But if that story is and may we all have a story as strong as a Neil Young song, but it that was really powerful. Then some of those friends went on to study theater in college. I followed one of them up to the University of Northern Colorado that had a really good it had a good theater program, but it was focused more on theater education. But at the time, but that was when plays were given to me, and I had a girlfriend at the time that she had like plays on her shelf. Like that's weird, it was I was still so late to the party, and then it was in college that can I tell you one more story right in this quadrant here?
As many as
Uh,
you can. Yeah.
uh, I have all the hubris of a 21-year-old theater major who doesn't know anything, but of course, what we do, at least what I did, sadly, was acted like I knew everything. We had one professor who was the chair of the department, Dr. John Wilcox, and he actually had some professional theater experience. I think he'd taken some classes with Tyrone Guthrie. Um, he was a character, Dr. John. And I got cast in a bunch of the plays because the bar was pretty low for dudes in our department. I had a loud voice and I could learn lines. And of course, I thought I was, perhaps just a terribly major actor and performer. So I marched into Dr. John's office my junior year with all the hubris of a 21-year-old theater major. I have since, over my years of teaching, met myself
Many
when another
times.
student comes in, of course, as you likely know. And I marched in, and because the focus, most of the classes were about theater education, and they produced some fantastic theater, and people are going into colleges, universities, junior highs, etc. Um, I walked in and said, "Well, Dr. John, you know what the problem with this department is?" It's a great line to lead with. The problem with this department is there's no real feedback. It's all about how would you, because I would direct a scene, but my notes would be like, well, how would you do that in a high school? Or it would be hard. And it's like, I don't want that metric. There's no real feedback about like doing this really with your career professionally. And he just listened to me and smoked. The next quarter, I was in a production of The Shadowbox. I think it was that year. This has got to be 1978 or whatever. It's the year that every theater was required by law to produce The Shadowbox, which I love that play. And I was Mark or someone in that play. And we were in a little theater in the round, and I was in that play, and we opened and closed like you do in college on one weekend. And Dr. John says, Dietz, you got a minute? Come into my office. I walk in there. He's always smoking. And he goes, "Hey, remember when you were in here last quarter and said, there's no real feedback here in the department?" And I said, "Yes, I do remember that." He said, "Would you like some feedback?" And I said, "Well, yes, of course I would." He said, "Don't ever act again." And first of all, it's the moment that you realize, well, when we say feedback,
We don't mean
what
it.
we mean is praise. Yes, I would, I would,
Yeah.
I would appreciate praise from you. But then here's the thing that set me on my way, Robbie, and why I think about Dr. John all the dang time is then he went on and said this. He said, "I've watched you act here for a couple years." He said, "You're actually a decent actor. You're a pretty good actor in the plays that you don't care about." And I'm sure I tilted my head. And he said, "When you're in a play that you don't really care about, like a little silly comedy or some play you're not, that you'd had to try out for, whatever." He said, "You're actually fine. You do what you have to do." He said, "But you're a terrible actor in the plays that you love." And he said, "You're going to be unhappy as an actor." He said, "The reason you're unhappy is that you seem to me you want to be looking at it. You don't want to be in it. As soon as you like the play, you want to look at it." He said, "So, first of all, you'll be unhappy as an actor, I think." He said, "And I don't know what to tell you." He said, "But I think that might mean if you want to stick in this business, maybe you want to be a director. Maybe you want to be a writer, but you do not want to be inside the event." That it took me years to really appreciate that. But even early on, and what he did is then he canceled all my classes, and my final year, he just gave me directing. He just let me do directing independent studies, and I just started directing work. I still hadn't met a playwright. That wasn't until I got to Minneapolis and started directing readings and workshops in 1980. But Dr. John Wilcoxon taught me a really valuable lesson about he was able to see perceive how I was wired, and he was spot on.
What an astute observation. And I'm also
Well,
curious as to like his character. Like it's like that's such a tough conversation to have.
and right, and you and I both do a lot of teaching. He knew when to have it,
Hmm.
because I bet he saw that in me from the jump. He saw that I was avid, I was energetic. I had enough moxie. I had the wrong moxie, but I had that. You want that student with that ego.
Right.
You just want you yeah, and so the lesson for me as a teacher then years later was I'm hard on my students, and I'm candid with my students, but it has to be at the right, as you know, you can say the right thing, the perfect right thing at the wrong time,
Yeah.
and you will make everything wores.
They got to be ready to
Uh,
hear it. They got to
yeah,
be ready to hear it. Yeah.
yeah,
Fascinating.
and so eventually, a longer story, get myself to Minneapolis, hang out at the ingratiate myself into the Playwright Center. August Wilson has just arrived, Lee Blessing,
Oh wow.
Barbara Field, Marcia Chamberlain. And these writers are not, they're not sick. They feel like a generation older than me. They're not they weren't that much older than me, maybe 10 years. But again, I don't know anything, but I just lied my way into directing these readings and workshops. And then that was really, I didn't go to grad school. I did never took a playwriting class, but that was my grad school, my boot camp, and I did that for 11 years. I directed a workshop or a reading of a new play virtually every week for 11 years.
So it
Uh,
was it
it
was
made
acting to
upwards of,
directing.
say again?
It was acting to directing. So
It
directing
was
was the
acting to
next. Yeah.
directing. And when I first got to Minneapolis, I auditioned for a couple little plays and I just needed to try to meet some people. But then I quickly, and people took a chance on me, right?
Mhm.
People took a chance on me as a director, and then ultimately they took a chance on me um, as a playwright, and it's why I still to this day describe myself as a director who writes plays. I still direct a couple plays a year, but that used to was my livelihood for the first 10 or 12 years of my career.
What is it about? I'm getting back to that liking to see it. Is that where the direction usually goes? Like what do you love about the direction?
I love that everything has to be intentional. I love intentionality, even when it's somewhat ephemeral or inexplicable. I love quiet spectacle.
Mhm.
I love the status shifts between power shifts between characters on stage. It's just that proximate moment. I'm trying to get back to that woman singing that song, walking down that shaft of light.
Yeah.
It's I love making the landing the poetry, even though we're not making it sound like poetry. So it's a box we make, right? And so I get to I there's a part of me that just this magic box of the stage that, as Peter Brook reminded us, we're just really trying to make empty space valuable. And of course, any place can be a theater, but what are those things that make it valuable? Whether it's beauty, whether it's tension, whether it's spectacle. And by spectacle, in the world I work in, right? About spectacle, I mean a man pulls a yellow daisy out of his gray jacket and hands it to a woman. I mean, like, if you haven't seen that, if the bar has been this for the whole play and then that gesture happens, spectacle is relative to the size of the encounter.
Do you like to direct your own writing, or do you prefer to do something else?
On occasion, I like them both.
Mhm.
I don't feel a need to direct all my plays. It does complete the experiment
Mhm.
for some plays. Some plays, the director in me has really, really written the play. I have a couple recent, Agatha Christie mystery murder romps, and that really was the director trying to say, how do I get six people to tell this big, crazy story? I mean, I would love to, direct Gaslight down the pipe later, or direct some other stuff, but I don't feel need to direct them all. And most importantly, what I say to theaters is I do not in any sense consider if I direct the play, it's the definitive production of the play. That's just the level of narcissism that the field doesn't need. Now, do I encounter playwrights should never direct their own work? Well, of course I do, because that's in the water, to which I try to respectfully say, well, playwrights who can't direct should not direct their own work. But
Yeah.
I was grandfathered in a little bit, and now literally not, I'm not an actual grandfather, but I look like one. And because so many theaters knew me as a director before they knew me as a playwright,
Yeah.
when I am more often than not, I am asked to direct. We want to do a play of your Dietz. Is this something you want to direct? And I say yes, yes or no.
Mhm.
The other work I do is almost exclusively new plays. I think I've probably directed, I don't know, 50, 60 plays over the years, but I think on two occasions the playwright was not in the room.
Oh,
I think
interesting. Yeah.
one was Christopher Hampton, one was Sam Shepard. Every other play I've ever done was a new play, either the premiere or a newish production. And I love working with that other playwright in the room. And because of this, I get to see don't get to see other playwrights in rehearsal,
Yeah.
because you're the only playwright in the room, usually.
Yeah.
And directors do not get to see other directors in rehearsal because you're the director in the room. Because of this little hyphen I have, um, it has it has grown my education because I'm the playwright and you're directing my work. I'm getting to see another director work, or I'm directing your play and I'm seeing how you work as a playwright. I'm getting to see another playwright work. That's golden to me.
Yeah.
I just love that. Whether what I take, what I can use, it's the closest articulation, and it's a little rambling, I know, but it's the closest articulation I can have of how those two strands in me sort of feed one another.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think of them as two hats. I mean, I know the expected rehearsal room protocols, and I'm a rules person fundamentally, but I'm not an authority person.
Yeah.
And so but the notion of like I put on a different hat and be the playwright director. If I'm directing my own play, the very first thing I say at the very first rehearsal is, I am not the expert on this play. Uh,
Yeah.
do not think that I know my intentions with this play. Intentionality is the thing we invent to make us think we're doing what the playwright wants. Don't assume the playwright knows what they want.
Yeah.
Maybe, sometimes I do. I'm opinionated, but let's find this together, because it can really shut down. I don't know if you've done this. It can shut down an actor, and they think, oh, the director, and I can see it in the actor's eyes at the first reading. Oh, the writer is directing the play. I need to disabuse that
Yeah. Or
notion.
or the director's
Yeah.
in the head of the actor. That happens all the time. It's like
Yes.
you can see that cooking. It really
Yeah.
is, I think, such a matter of letting go.
I think it's letting go, and I also think it's prompting, inviting scrutiny, inviting expertise, inviting the person to the party. Let's try this. Let's find this.
And you never jump off the cliff the same way twice. And I think
No,
it's like
right.
when you fall, you jump off the cliff, and you're gonna fall. And it's like if you
Yeah.
think you can control that fall.
I remember the first time I said to an actor, something I like to do at the moment, again, as with all directing, right?
Hmm.
Talk about you have the trying to give the right note, which is hard, at the right moment, which is even harder. I remember the first time I said to an actor, we had done the scene and we'd done it a few times. It seemed to be fine. I don't remember if this was a play of mine or not. And I said, "What else is in this scene that you wish you were doing?" And this actor, God bless, was a really good actor, but thought it was kind of a trick question. Like one of those directory questions where I'm softening you up to give you this. And I had to repeat it a few times. I said, this scene has what I'm this scene is I'm full from this scene. This is what we want. But if there's more stuff, if there's another thing, you're sitting at home and you go, God, next time we do that, I want to try this. I said, that's what I
Yeah.
mean about inviting it.
Yeah.
Tell me that. Because the worst thing in the world is to get in previews, or even be at the opening night party and have some actor say, "Ah, great opening, way to go." But I always wish I'd tried him coming in with, like, dude.
I'm doing that all the time. I think it's built into actors that they think that there's some
Yeah, maybe.
trick, and so I always say, I'm asking this question. I don't know the answer. Now I don't know the answer, but
I don't know
what
the
is
answer.
yeah?
No,
Because and again, you got to find it every production.
that's funny. That's true.
Directing wise, so I just find I didn't know you well enough, so I'm really this really kind of fascinates me because your writing is so good. It's so playable. It's so good.
Oh,
It's like
thank you.
the words work. Everything works. And if it doesn't work, it's because you're doing it wrong. Generally, I find if it's not working, there's another way in, and it's
Okay.
also very versatile. You could pick this theme, you could pick that thing. There's a lot of things that kind of work around it. So I would have thought that it was playwright to director, but it's really director to playwright. And I'm fascinated in how that informs the actual written word.
It's motion. I mean, when we talked about theater teaching, when last I saw you all, this kind of came up, I know, but um the director in me knows, I just want the ball to keep being passed. Not speed, but motion. If we're at the same, if the room feels the same at the bottom of page 7 as it did at the top of page 5, I have work to do. And it may be a power thing, it might be a status thing, it might be some movement I need to play with, it might be intentionality. But I feel like the main thing I learned, I'm sure, structural and writing things from directing a lot of new plays, but I feel like the main thing I learned, and then it has been, a 45-year apprenticeship to have this show up in my plays, is we went flat there. And starting with that as a director, we're just a little flat there. And it never works for me to make it more interesting. It always works to make it more purposeful. Like we're just a little flat there. And it might be the play. You know what I mean? But it's still my job as a director. We went a little flat there. What can we do? And it's just the I don't know the right metaphor to use, Rodney, but it's just like a little synapse didn't happen, or the electrical current just we're just I would hope that recognizing that as a director ultimately shows up in the plays, not in early drafts, but as I go through, I feel like I must be reading. I write it up this desk, I print it on the printer over there. The first thing I do is go through and mark it up, and I bet that's the director in me marking up that play. The playwright in me is trying to finesse some stuff, but I bet that's the director in me going, "We're a little flat there. We're a little well, we're conversing. What great. Wow, I hope people want to go hear people converse. Like nobody I would never pay money to hear somebody converse. Like
Yeah.
what's what's the gristle? So
Yeah.
that's my clumsy way to say how does this show up? But I do think it I don't always consciously know how it improved my playwriting, but I know that my director voice shows up and wants motion, wants change, wants status, not speed. I like pace, as
Yeah.
my hopefully those scenes in my play that you're doing are moving okay, but because that's on me and
Oh,
I
they're
gotta
moving
hand it over.
great. Yeah, they're moving
But
great.
I
They're moving
want
actually right now. They're moving too fast. It's
all
like
right.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
getting them to stop and
Yeah.
find. It's like don't enjoy the pace so much that you forget what's happening kind of underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just those turns, scene's a little different now.
Mhm.
Scene's a little different now. And that's I say this like it's so easy to sit in our chairs here and say this, but the level of repetition that directing, the level of just labor. Directing is just I find it to be significantly more labor than writing. Maybe because it's public labor, but just the labor of repetition. And so when I teach directing, I would say to my MFA directors, okay, they're going to go through that scene. You gave your few notes. They're going to go through this scene for the fifth time in this half an hour of rehearsal. What are you watching for? And they'll say, "What do you mean?" I go, "No, right in front of you, or articulate this time through. I'm watching for this." Because if you're watching for, is it better? What is that metric?
Yeah.
Or is it good? Right? Writers have readings. I'm having a reading tonight, actually, in this house. Like, will it? Is it? If my metric is it good? I don't. It's not an actionable question. But okay, the director will, maybe just to appease me, the director will say, "I'm watching for power shift between the characters," and I say, "Good. Don't watch for anything else. Just watch for that."
It's
Now
fascinating.
I'm trying to disrupt them and make them think, but I'm also trying to acknowledge the fact that a, a, as a director, a play can just wear you down, and we're supposed to hold it and be fresh, and it's hard.
That's what I mean. I still act. I still love acting, but I can't remember where I got it from. It was probably Anne Bogart because I get so much great stuff from her. But it's like
Mhm.
if you don't like repeating, if you don't like practicing, if you don't like doing it over and over and over and over and over again, you might not be an actor.
Oh yeah,
And it's
that's so true.
I like to get there. I like to as an actor. I like to get there. I like to get where
Yeah,
where it wants to go.
yeah.
Yeah. So it is really so much about practice. I'm interested in where your imagination goes when you write. Like what do you see? What is happening in your imagination when you're writing?
This that's a very good question. what that question teaches me is that I really try not to think about that.
Mm,
I try to I I try to think about it in intentionality. I try to keep motion. I try to keep stuff moving. And I believe, Rodney, that my imagination is going somewhere. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to acknowledge it. Maybe I'm just too superstitious. I'd have playwright colleagues who you likely have too that say like they just hear a voice and it just funnels through them. I don't. I, maybe I've experienced that. My fear about myself is if I consciously said I experienced that, I would keep looking for that. And then I'd be pissed off when it didn't show up. And so I will, which this is not to say, I mean, I'm a structuralist at heart, but it's not to say that I don't work from I don't work from an outline per se, but I might just have a cheat sheet to my left here, and I might just write down a couple things that I know I'm writing this scene between two people. Maybe the story thing I think needs to happen. We need to find this out. Here's a cool line I thought of in the shower this morning. Just stray things. Why are they there? Because I don't walk around thinking I have any ideas, or I don't want to acknowledge that I have to come up with ideas. I have those there as a cheat sheet. I launch a scene. The craft part of me does some labor, and hopefully the that imaginative part of me, um, the things I don't expect, gets invited. Gets invited to show up. But man, I must really keep my nose to what my dad said once. My dad, who, saw upwards of 6 plays in his life, 4 of which probably written by me. And I was rewriting a play this years ago in my parents' basement, the house of my childhood in Denver. My dad worked at his railroader, never worked at a desk on his life, but he had an old desk down there, which is now what this computer's sitting on top of. I'm down there on some important deadline, I'm sure, to save the American theater with the revision I was going to do that afternoon. And I could sense him behind me, like kind of standing there. And as I'm struggling with my play, I remember at the time thinking, what must he think about what I'm doing? Do you know what I mean? And so finally he just said, "So, are you writing a play down?" And I will never forget that, because I realized for years I'd been trying to think a play up. And I would sit in my chair and go, I need to think up a play. And here was my pragmatic railroader father saying, "Are you writing a play down?" So the question of what my imagination is probably best told by, I'm just trying to write it down when it
hmm.
comes. And it made me a more pragmatic, and that again, this probably just suits my personality, Rodney, but it frees me. It feels free to me to not be looking up, but be looking towards the page. There's that great Tom Waits line in his interview with Elizabeth Gilbert where he says, for she asked him about his lyrics and like, where the hell do those Tom Waits lyrics come from? For to be able to write those lyrics. And he said, well, for years he said, I always thought there was something inside me that wanted to get out. He said, and it finally dawned on me, no, there's all sorts of stuff outside me trying to get in. Like,
True.
see it, follow it, track it, write it down.
Interesting. How much of your father's, because I think this is very true with children, how much of your father's like work ethic do you think infused you? Did you go towards it or
Complete,
against it? Yeah.
fully,
Yeah.
full, fully. And my mom and my the ethos in our family, be useful. We were a loving family, but we were a working family. I'm a labor kid, I'm a union kid, and it doesn't seem to me that I should get a pass because I'm an artist. And if anything, it seems to me I probably have had this very, very fortunate career. I'm not the best writer of the people I started with. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the blah blah blah. But I'm dogged and I will write the play in front of me. And that's probably another way to say what I said about writing it down, because it's easy to try to find the I'm gonna write my ultimate play. I'm gonna write my masterpiece. I mean, and I'm sure I thought about that with the first couple plays I wrote, and man, no one needs to see those masterpieces. Instead, when I realized I'm gonna write the play in front of me, and this sometimes that play turns out to be get 200 productions. Sometimes it's just sitting over there on a shelf and no one's ever seen it, Rodney. It's like that's the work ethic I think of, and I just don't think I get a. And I'm also hard on students about this. Like you weren't promised a bourgeois lifestyle.
Yeah.
You this is there was no bait and switch here. Nobody said to you, the thing about playwriting is that it's wildly lucrative. It's really fun. You get a 401k. Like, no, none of that stuff was said to you because it's not true. And so don't act surprised when like this is hard. I don't think we're special because it's hard. I think living in the world is hard. I think working for a living is hard. But I have very little patience with a sort of artistic ethos that does not value labor.
It's so interesting. Yeah, and it is amazing how much our parents give us that. And it's like I
Oh
think
God.
in our generation, it's like,
Yeah. Was
yeah,
that true for you?
very much
Is that
so.
true?
100%. Both my mother and my father. It's amazing how much their work ethic and who they are comes through.
Teachers that show up, so much of the theater, which is different than if I suppose if I wrote fiction or poetry or something like that, the theater basically asks you to show up for each other.
Yeah, you have
Just
to.
show up for each other.
Yeah,
We can dress it up in a lot of ways, and um, I've taught collaboration classes. You likely have too. But what really it comes down to, and I think about my parents with that, is like show up for each other,
yeah,
help each other, and ask for help when you need it, but show up for each other. And that, like,
yeah.
that's big.
It's amazing how much you inadvertently have crossed my path over the years, including
Oh,
probably responsible for my marriage because the first show I was in was,
wow.
yeah, it was Private Eyes with
Well,
Sharon.
well, you're
That's
welcome.
yeah. Well, thank you.
First of all,
Um,
you're welcome. Where did you? Where did now remind me of this? Where did you do Private Eyes?
we did it
That's where you
here.
met Sharon.
We
What
did
were you
it.
doing
We
it?
did it at Theater 99 here about 24, 20. I'm terrible with
Okay.
dates, but yeah, but 24 years ago when we first met, I actually was in town shooting a short film. My agent at the time that was here while I was waiting said, "Well, this guy Greg Tavares is doing this play downtown. He's looking for somebody there.
Wow.
They don't have anybody." So I get there. He's like, "Go read the script. You see if tell me if you like it." I read it. I was playing it's Julian, right? Julian the what was the name of the
Were you the director?
I was the director. Yes, I was the English
Adrian.
guy. Yeah,
Adrian. Adrian.
Adrian. So I went and read it, loved it, came back, and he goes, "Okay, well, here's the secret. There's nobody else. We're starting. We got our first read through tonight, and you want to do it? You're in." And I was like, "Great," but I was a little reticent because of the kissing part. Like, there's some real heavy kissing in that play with the thing, and I was like, "Well, that can always be weird. I mean, for actors, it's always weird." And I said, "Well, we'll get through it." And then so I was sweating it the whole time, waiting, waiting, waiting. Sharon was late, and she walks in finally, and I go, "This is gonna be okay."
You're welcome. Again, you're welcome.
But one of the first professional productions I
That's
saw
great.
was Trust in Seattle. I had moved to
Oh,
Seattle.
I directed that. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had moved there
Oh,
to work, and I had seen professional productions, but nothing like that. Like when I got to Seattle, it's like, oh, theater is for real people. Like it's not
man,
just
that was
for yeah,
and
yeah.
that's a great window of time. I think Trust would have been like 92 or something
hmm
like that. It's a guess. But
I think it was a
yeah, I don't think I'm proud of that little play. I don't I've done better directing work in retrospect than I did with that play, but I had a good cast, and it taught me a lot about the play. That was the
yeah.
premiere, and then it Trust had a nice life, and I kind of feel like I don't get to Private Eyes without having written Trust in some ways. There's some line there that I won't try and figure out, but well, I had no idea oh,
No,
you
and
had saw.
and it blew me up. I mean, as far as it was like, okay, this is a profession. This is I can see myself in this. It's not all Shakespeare. It's not all musicals. It's not all This is kind of what I wanted to do.
Stuff in did you work on plays in Seattle?
Very little because Seattle was
Okay.
if you wanted to crack
Yeah,
the
it
plays in
was.
Seattle, you went to New York.
Yeah, yeah,
I learned
yeah,
that
yeah,
after getting there. But my
yeah,
entire
yeah.
film career started there. Like I shot my first feature in
Wow.
Seattle, and so all everything so much happened in Seattle in that 8 years for me. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah.
Isn't that wild that you were there 8 because I was there that whole time.
It
Isn't that wild?
in these podcasts, I'm constantly the people I interview, even David Whalen, who we thought mainly knew Sharon. You cross paths like left and right, and it's like
Yeah.
it's amazing how kind of interconnected.
Sharon's not gonna be mad at me, but now this makes me wonder how she and I got on each other's radar originally.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is. I mean, I remember seeing her great production of This Random World, but there must have we were in touch before then. I don't remember. Anyway,
yeah. It's such a again such a small world. But
wow.
as for your plays like Trust, like I know I'm not asking you in any way, shape, or form to pick favorites because they all what they are. But does it ever surprise you, like which are the ones that go on? Like, do you have a child you love so much it just never got out there in the world as much as you wanted to?
I'm sure that's true, and I'm not going to list favorites for you, but I would also say it's a I find it a mythology that playwrights are not supposed to have favorite plays. It's like, and it's like when a student says to me, like, well, they're all my children. And I'm like, no, it's not. Go have a child. When you have a child, those are your children.
Yeah.
Your play is your play, man. Yeah, I'm proud of them. Many of them go out and get jobs. I worked just as hard or harder on the plays that just didn't happen, Rodney, you know that, as I did in the 2 weeks that I wrote Lonely Planet. Probably still my most produced play, which is proof to me about every 30 plays or so, one of them comes out clean. But the rest of them, I enjoyed that labor. And yes, I have plays that I have quiet plays that are just seem this I don't mean to sound this self-aggrandizing, like that just seem sturdy and sort of incessant. I have a little play called the Nina Variations, and it's 43 variations on the final scene of Seagull. And that play is never, uh, it's 25, 30 years old. It's always being done somewhere. It's my most produced play around the world. Never big, but and that was always a favorite play of mine. And so I think at the moment I launched it, I wanted this, that's mythology, right? This big celebratory, big production. And then, and my plays don't really go to New York. And so, but I wanted all those things. And instead, this play has just been just finds homes. The other play I thought of when you asked that question, I've had plays that I think have had more productions than they deserve. I won't name
Don't
them.
say that. Yeah.
Plays, but I have plays that I thought, no, I have better plays than that play, but it suited that company. And who am I to say? Someone takes a leap of faith with a play of mine that maybe I think, man, that's really 1993 Stephen Dietz. And he was a decent enough guy, but if it speaks to someone now, good for them. I have a play that I just feel like it was sort of badly timed, and this is just maybe my own hubris. I have a play called Rancho Mirage, and it had a Rolling World premiere, National New Play Network. Um, it is one of the darkest comedies I've ever written. It's just scabrous. It's just, but it's three couples at a dinner party who decide this is the night we tell each other the truth, and it burst out of the chute, and it had some productions. It's funny as hell and it's dark as hell. And it came out the same year as God of Carnage.
Gotcha.
And it was like God of Carnage was like the shadow box of those years.
Over there.
Like
It's
it,
having a
you
comeback
know,
now too. Yeah.
yeah, and having come back now. Rancho Mirage, I always felt, I don't think this about any other play. I always think like Rancho Mirage was always was always a little, there was a play in its way, which is also, it just probably didn't, maybe it didn't suit people. It still gets done a couple times a year, but that's a play I thought I can't, that's the most intimate, commercial, funny, dark play. I don't think it's, I may have written better plays. It's not as poetically sound as something like Bloomsday, but yeah. So I have a relationship with all of them.
I got to read it now.
Ob-
Yeah,
Obviously. Yeah.
absolutely.
I'll send it to you.
Writing now, like, so how is what is writing now for you? Has it changed? Is it the same?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm just tracking that. I mean, I'm now 8 years out of teaching full time. I'm still doing regular master classes around the country, because I love to teach. I'm working on my playwriting book right now. Um, but that was a change when I was given more time, and I finished that teaching job around the same time our kids were going off to college and growing up. So this house is quieter, this studio is quieter. It was a welcome thing, but that was a change. It it was I think having that, the energy and the frankly the stress of teaching fed a lot of my writing. It just did. I wrote more plays during my 12 years as a tenured full professor than I did in the 12 years before then. I wrote almost twice as many plays when I had a full-time teaching job. I find that ridiculous. What was that about? But I
So,
think it was, teaching made my craft be, I mean, there was a lot of bullshit that I didn't care for, as there is in academia often. And I had a really great position they'd made for me. My colleagues were fantastic, but my language for making work was at the forefront of my thinking. It had to be there for my students. And I think even though my time was compromised by my own choice and by my wonderful kids, that those craft mechanisms were like on the tip of my tongue. They were, and so I felt myself after teaching ended, then the pandemic hit. I felt myself getting dull. I was dull to myself. And I wrote, and some of the plays that are coming out now, I mean, Gaslight was written, I think, essentially during the pandemic. I'm premiered another play earlier this year that was written during the pandemic. So I must have done stuff. If my wife Allison was here, she would say, "Well, of course you did. You're a freak," which I'm sure she says lovingly. Of course you did it because you're a writing freak. But I just felt dull to myself. So I feel like now I'm in a new chapter, and that feels like it's gone away. And I feel in a very vivid. I feel hungry to write and to explore. And one of the more heartbreaking things I would say to my students, it made me think of that when you asked this question, which is, I believe as you get better, it gets harder.
that is so
It's
true. Yeah.
it's harder for me now. It's perhaps more rewarding, but I have a standard I've set for myself, and I have expectations. I've engendered expectations. The next play I send to you and Sharon, I'm going, well, I have a standard hopefully I've set with plays of mine that you've produced, plays you haven't produced. Like I have that standard now as a young playwright. Like it was just, I thought it was a victory just to finish a play. It's not a victory to me anymore. It's hard to finish a play, but I know my tricks. I don't want to rewrite the same play I wrote in 2004 or whatever. So it's harder, but I'm I'm learning to welcome it, and I'm lucky as hell that here this is what I get to do with my life. Going back to our parents and ethos and work, I'm aware that I'm getting to be an elder in this field that does not produce many elders, just by the nature of uh not really the art, but by the nature of the business.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. I always like to end these conversations. We call it keep it pure. Like, what's something you're in your life right now you're trying to keep authentic or that you're working on to keep pure?
Oh, what a good thing. I'm trying to model as much generosity as possible. When I taught the adage that I tried to foist on my students was we try to operate in a generosity economy. I'm trying to keep I am working at I'm I'm working at being an elder in this field and the responsibility that comes with that. One aspect of being an elder is invisibility, meaning, and I'm not invisible. I'm still having a fortunate career. However, we're not visible in the same way. You are granted that so you can watch and so you can mentor, but generosity is a big part of that. And my definition of generosity is very different than kindness. Because obviously, sure, be kind to people. The kindness costs you anything. Generosity, however, it actually costs you something. You actually are giving over something that you could just as easily keep. And so I'm trying to practice that in relationships. I'm trying to practice that in when I'm teaching in my marriage, but just and again, we're going back to our parents. My folks were great parents. They weren't perfect people. None of us are. But they were perfect. They were perfect to me as parents. Um, and they just modeled that show up for each other, help each other. So I know that's a little general, but that generosity is at the forefront of my thinking, and I'm trying to keep it there.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Stephen. It's been not only a great conversation, but inspiring. And I'm ready to get
Well,
back in there tonight and get a little
bless
more
you.
done.
Please give my best to everybody working on Gaslight. I'm so excited. I'm excited I'm gonna get to see you. So yeah, love to everybody.
Awesome.